The arrogant laugh echoed through the empty street as a luxury car screeched to a stop in front of the small-town veterinary clinic. A young man in a designer coat sneered, "Move your mutt out of my way." "Lady." Dr. Lily Carter, an ex-military vet turned animal doctor, clutched the leash of her German shepherd, Max. Before she could respond, the rich kid kicked at the dog. Max yelped and Lily's eyes filled with rage. But before she could act, a shadow loomed behind them, a tall man in a Navy uniform. "Step away from the dog." His voice cut through the air like steel. No one knew then that this single confrontation would change their lives forever. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The morning sun rose gently over Port Blossom, a quiet coastal town where life moved at the pace of a lazy tide. Dew glistened on the rooftops, birds perched on telephone wires, and the faint aroma of roasted coffee drifted from the corner cafe. It was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone, where strangers stood out and kindness wasn't a luxury, it was a way of life. At the edge of Main Street stood Port Blossom Veterinary Clinic, a modest building with white shutters and a hand-painted sign that read, "Healing with Heart." Inside, Dr. Lily Carter was already at work. Her auburn hair was tied in a loose bun, a few strands falling around her face as she gently examined a golden retriever on the table. Her calm voice soothed the animal, her touch both professional and tender. To anyone watching, it was clear. Lily didn't just treat animals, she understood them. Lily had once been a military combat medic, tending to wounded soldiers in dusty deserts and war-torn villages. After her discharge, she returned home seeking peace, trading the chaos of the battlefield for the quiet hum of a small-town clinic. But though she'd left the war behind, the war hadn't completely left her. Sometimes, in the silence of the night, she still heard the echoes, gunfire, cries for help, and the thundering heartbeat of fear. Her only true comfort came from Max, her loyal German shepherd. Once a military canine trained for detection and protection, Max had served alongside Lily overseas. When a roadside explosion had trapped her unit, Max had pulled her from the wreckage, saving her life at the cost of his hearing in one ear. Since then, they had been inseparable. That morning, Max lay by the clinic door, his sharp eyes watching every movement with quiet vigilance. His tail thumped lightly when Lily passed by, and she smiled. "Good boy," she murmured, slipping him a treat. The bond between them was more than handler and dog. It was family. Outside, the small town stirred awake. A farmer waved as he passed by with his truck. Children rode their bikes down the wet street, their laughter echoing off the brick walls. Everything seemed peaceful, almost perfect. But peace is fragile, especially in a world where pride and cruelty often disguise themselves as power. Lily had no idea that by the afternoon, this peaceful town would witness a confrontation that would shake its calm to the core, and remind everyone that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear fur and loyalty. The peace of Port Blossom was broken by the sharp roar of an engine. Heads turned as a sleek black sports car tore down Main Street, its tires screeching on the wet pavement. Dust swirled behind it, and the quiet hum of the town vanished beneath the arrogant growl of horsepower. People stepped back onto the sidewalks, frowning as the car came to a sudden halt right in front of Port Blossom Veterinary Clinic. The door swung open, and out stepped Brandon Hale, the 22-year-old son of the wealthiest businessman in the state. Everything about him screamed money, his tailored jacket, polished shoes, and the smug tilt of his smile. He glanced around the street with obvious disdain, taking in the humble storefronts and the cracked road like he had stepped into a forgotten world. Brandon adjusted his sunglasses, smirking. "This town looks like it belongs in a museum," he muttered. Across the street, the bakery owner shot him a look, but Brandon didn't notice or didn't care. He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair and began pacing toward the clinic door, curiosity or perhaps boredom driving his steps. Inside, Lily was just finishing with a client when she heard the distinct click of expensive shoes on the sidewalk. Max's ears perked up, his body stiffening. The bell above the clinic door jingled as Brandon stepped inside, his expression shifting from arrogance to irritation as he spotted the dog lying near the entrance. "Whoa, keep that beast away from me," he snapped, wrinkling his nose. Lily turned, her calm tone unwavering. He's not a beast. He's my partner, and this is his clinic too. Brandon let out a low laugh. Partner? Lady, it's a dog. He moved closer, pointing at the floor where Max lay. Shouldn't he be outside or something? Max rose slowly, standing between Brandon and Lily. His fur bristled slightly, not out of aggression but instinct. Lily placed a reassuring hand on his back, keeping him steady. He's fine, she said evenly. But you're scaring him with your tone. Brandon rolled his eyes. Scaring him? I've seen tougher pets in Beverly Hills. You country folks really take these mutts too seriously. He took another step forward, testing boundaries he didn't understand. From outside, a few townspeople paused to watch through the clinic window. They recognized trouble when they saw it. The tension thickened. Brandon grinned arrogantly, tapping his designer watch. You know, maybe I should buy this place, turn it into something useful. A car showroom, maybe? Lily's eyes hardened. She didn't respond, but Max's low growl did the talking. What neither of them knew was that this arrogant intruder was about to push too far and wake a storm no money could control. The sound of Max's growl filled the small clinic, deep and low like distant thunder. Brandon froze for a second, then smirked, mistaking the warning for weakness. Oh, please, he scoffed, glancing at Lily. You really let this mutt act like he owns the place? His tone dripped with mockery, each word sharper than the last. Lily stood firm, her arms crossed. I don't let him act like anything, she replied calmly. He's trained to protect. You should take a step back. Brandon took a deliberate step forward instead, his polished shoe clicking against the tile. Protect? He sneered. From what, me? He leaned down slightly, locking eyes with Max. What are you gonna do, boy? Bark me to death? The German shepherd's lips curled, exposing his teeth. His instincts told him this man was not a friend. But Lily's soft hand on his collar kept him steady. She forced a tight smile. Sir, I think it's best if you leave now. Brandon's eyes glinted with arrogance. You really think you can talk to me like that? Do you even know who I am? Lily sighed softly. No, and I don't care. That simple answer hit Brandon's ego like a punch. He laughed, but it was hollow, more like the sound of insecurity hiding behind pride. Then suddenly, in one cruel motion, he swung his foot toward Max. The kick connected. Max yelped in pain, stumbling back. The room went still. Lily's breath caught in her throat as shock turned to fury. What did you just do? She demanded, her voice trembling, not from fear but anger. Brandon straightened, brushing imaginary dust off his sleeve. Maybe that'll teach your dog some manners, he said coldly. Lily stepped forward, eyes blazing. You're lucky I still remember how to stay calm, she hissed. Touch him again and you'll regret it. For the first time, Brandon hesitated. The calm in her voice carried a weight he couldn't place. Something disciplined, military, dangerous. Max regained his footing, growling louder now, his gaze locked on Brandon. Outside, a small crowd had gathered near the window, whispers spreading like wildfire. That's Lily's service dog, one woman murmured. He kicked him? Brandon looked around, realizing eyes were on him. His arrogance flickered into discomfort, but his pride refused to back down. Whatever, he muttered, stepping toward the door. This dump's not worth my time. As he turned to leave, Max barked sharply, one deep, commanding sound that made Brandon flinch. And across the street, a man in a Navy uniform lifted his head, watching the scene unfold. The moment of confrontation had begun, and the protector was on his way. The bell above the clinic door jingled again, but this time it wasn't a customer. The air seemed to shift as Jake Turner stepped inside. He wasn't just tall. He carried himself with the unmistakable stillness of someone who'd seen things most people never could. His Navy uniform was crisp, but his eyes told a different story, steady, watchful, and full of quiet authority. Brandon turned toward him, scoffing immediately. What, is this some kind of dog soldier reunion? He said with a sarcastic chuckle. Jake didn't answer. He simply looked at the young man, then down at Max, who was still standing protectively near Lily. The sight of the bruised shepherd made his jaw tighten. He stepped closer, his boots clicking once on the tile floor. You just kicked a service dog, he said evenly. You know that's a federal offense, right? Brandon blinked, momentarily thrown off. A what? Come on, man, it's just a dog. Jake's eyes narrowed. That dog served in Afghanistan. Probably did more for this country than you ever will. His voice wasn't raised, but every word landed like a hammer. The people outside began murmuring. Phones lifted, cameras recording. Brandon's smirk faltered, but he tried to recover. "You don't talk to me like that," he said sharply. "Do you even know who my father is?" Jake tilted his head slightly. "Do you think your father's name means anything here?" He took another slow step forward, his presence alone enough to make Brandon instinctively back up. "Apologize to the lady, and to the dog," Lily's heart pounded. She wasn't used to being defended, not since the army. But Jake's calm dominance commanded the entire room. She whispered, "Sir, it's okay." Jake raised a hand slightly, eyes never leaving Brandon. "Ma'am, with respect, it's not okay." Brandon scoffed again, trying to regain control. "You think I'm scared of some washed-up seal?" Jake's gaze hardened. "No. I think you're scared of yourself because deep down you know you just hurt someone better than you." For a heartbeat, the room went silent. Even Max stopped growling, sensing the shift. The arrogant smirk on Brandon's face faded into frustration. He turned abruptly, muttering something under his breath, and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Jake exhaled slowly, tension leaving his shoulders. He knelt beside Max, gently running a hand along the shepherd's side. "Easy, boy," he murmured. "You did good." Lily watched him, gratitude flickering behind her tired eyes. Outside, the onlookers began to disperse, but the story of what had just happened would spread through Port Blossom before sunset. For the first time in a long while, Lily felt something she hadn't felt in years: safe. The afternoon sun dipped low over Main Street, painting long shadows across the quiet town, but the peace that usually followed wasn't there. Rumors of what had happened at Lily's clinic spread like wildfire. By evening, half the town knew that Brandon Hale, the spoiled son of a wealthy businessman, had kicked a service dog, and that a Navy SEAL had stepped in to stop him. At a nearby cafe, Brandon sat slouched in a leather chair, sunglasses still on even as the sky turned orange. His friends surrounded him, other rich kids who had nothing to do but burn their father's money. One of them chuckled nervously. "Dude, I saw the video. That guy, he looked like he could snap you in half." Brandon rolled his eyes, his jaw tight. "Please. He's just some washed-up soldier playing hero in a broken town." He stirred his drink violently, the ice clinking like tiny alarms. "You think I'm scared of some Navy dropout?" He's lucky I didn't call security on him. Across town, Lily was closing up the clinic. The glass door still had a faint crack from where Brandon had kicked it earlier. She traced it with her fingers, shaking her head softly. "Unbelievable," she muttered. Max sat beside her, tail still and eyes alert, as if he sensed the day wasn't done testing them. Meanwhile, outside the cafe, Jake Turner walked past. He didn't mean to overhear, but Brandon's loud, mocking laughter made it impossible not to. "So, this Lily chick," Brandon was saying, his voice dripping with arrogance. "She's what? Some kind of war vet who thinks rescuing mutts makes her a hero? Maybe she should rescue herself from that dump she calls a clinic." His friends laughed half-heartedly, sensing danger in his words. Jake stopped in his tracks. His expression didn't change, but his hand flexed slightly at his side, a soldier's instinct. He turned, stepped through the cafe door, and the laughter stopped. Brandon froze mid-sentence. Jake stood there, calm as stone. "You've said enough," he said quietly. Brandon smirked, trying to mask his unease. "Oh, look, the hero again. You here to give me another lecture, old man?" Jake's tone never wavered. "You don't get it, do you? Respect isn't something money buys. You either earn it, or you lose it." For a moment no one spoke. Brandon's jaw clenched, his pride wounded deeper than any insult. As Jake walked out, the tension hung heavy, leaving Brandon burning with embarrassment and vengeance. He wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. The next morning dawned cloudy, the kind of gray that made even Port Blossom feel uneasy. The streets were quieter than usual, whispers still circulating about the incident at the clinic. Some pitied Lily, others admired her restraint. But everyone knew one thing: Brandon Hale's pride had been bruised, and men like him never let that go quietly. By mid-morning, Lily was sweeping the front steps of her clinic, trying to shake off the previous day. Max sat nearby, his gaze alert but calm. The rhythmic sound of the broom brushing against the concrete almost drowned out the distant purr of an engine. Almost. A familiar black sports car rolled to a stop. Lily froze, recognizing it instantly. Brandon stepped out, his expensive shoes crunching against gravel, his face twisted in anger rather than arrogance this time. "So this is where the circus continues," he said loudly, glancing around as if expecting an audience. Lily's grip on the broom tightened. "If you came to apologize, do it and leave. If not, you're trespassing," he laughed, a hollow sound. "Apologize to you? You should be thanking me for giving this dump attention. Half the town's talking about you." Max rose, his fur bristling. The low rumble in his chest warned of trouble. Lily stood firm, her posture calm but ready. "Brandon, leave now before you regret it." "Or what?" he sneered, stepping closer. "You'll sick your mud on me again? Go ahead. Let's see how tough you really are without your soldier friend." Lily didn't flinch. "I don't need anyone to handle people like you." Brandon's temper finally snapped. He reached out, shoving Lily hard against the doorframe. The broom clattered to the ground. Max exploded forward, barking furiously, teeth bared in pure instinctive protection. Before Brandon could react, a hand gripped his wrist. Strong, unyielding. He turned sharply and his eyes widened. Jake Turner stood behind him, expression cold as steel. His voice was low but sharp. "That's enough." Brandon tried to pull away, but Jake's grip didn't budge. "Let me go," he barked. Jake's eyes locked on his. "You just assaulted a veteran and provoked a service animal. That's 2 felonies in under a minute." The tension was electric. Townspeople across the street stopped to stare. Brandon's bravado crumbled, his face paling. Jake released him with a small shove. "Get out of here before I make a call you'll regret." Brandon stumbled back, clutching his wrist, eyes darting between them. He muttered a curse and stormed off, but his glare promised retaliation. Lily exhaled shakily, her heartbeat pounding. Jake turned to her. "You okay?" She nodded slowly, her hand resting on Max's head. "Yeah," she whispered. "But something tells me this isn't over." The sun had dipped low, painting the town in hues of gold and violet. Inside the quiet clinic, the chaos of the day had finally settled. Lily sat on the examination table, rubbing her bruised shoulder where Brandon had shoved her. Max lay at her feet, his head resting on his paws, eyes still watchful as if expecting the trouble to return. Jake leaned against the counter, arms crossed, studying her quietly. "You handled that well," he said finally. His voice was calm, almost admiring. Most people would have lost control. Lily smiled faintly, though the exhaustion in her eyes betrayed her. "I've seen worse," she replied softly. Jake tilted his head. "Yeah, I figured as much. You're not just a small-town vet, are you?" Lily hesitated. Few people in Port Blossom knew her full story. She took a deep breath, her gaze distant. "I used to serve," she said at last. "Army medic, Afghanistan." Jake straightened slightly. "Combat medic?" She nodded. 8 years. I patched up soldiers under fire, carried wounded men through minefields. Max was there too. He wasn't just a dog, he was part of my unit. Saved lives. She paused, stroking Max's fur as memories flickered in her eyes. Some painful, some proud. "He saved mine once," she continued. "There was an explosion, IED. I went down hard. Max found me under the rubble and dragged me back. He was injured, but he never left me." Her voice trembled briefly, but she steadied it with a quiet breath. "After that, I couldn't leave him behind. When I was discharged, I brought him home." Jake's expression softened. He understood that kind of bond. "So you traded the battlefield for this?" "Yeah," Lily said, managing a small smile. "After everything, I thought maybe I could still save lives." "Just smaller ones," Jake chuckled quietly. "Sometimes those are the lives that matter most." There was a silence then, comfortable and heavy with unspoken understanding. 2 soldiers from different wars, one fought with bullets, the other with memory, sharing the same quiet respect. Lily glanced toward the window, watching the last bit of daylight fade. "People like Brandon, they remind me of what's broken in the world," she murmured. "They don't understand loyalty or sacrifice." Jake nodded slowly. Then maybe it's time someone reminded him. She looked up, meeting his eyes. For the first time, there was something unspoken between them, a shared resolve. Whatever was coming next, they wouldn't face it alone. Outside, the wind rustled through the quiet streets of Port Blossom, carrying with it the faint echo of storms yet to come. By morning, the story of the confrontation had spread beyond Port Blossom. In the local diner, whispers replaced the usual hum of small talk. Some called Lily brave. Others said she'd gone too far. But everyone agreed, Brandon Hale wasn't taking his humiliation lightly. At the clinic, Lily tried to go about her work, treating an injured cat and reassuring an elderly farmer about his sick goat. But beneath her calm smile, her nerves were fraying. Every creak of the door made her flinch. Every unfamiliar car passing by made Max's ears perk up. The once peaceful clinic now felt like a fragile bubble ready to burst. Jake stopped by that afternoon, still in his civilian clothes, but carrying the quiet alertness of a soldier on duty. "He'll come back," he said simply, scanning the cracked window pane. "Guys like him always do when they lose face." Lily exhaled, wiping her hands on her apron. "Then I guess we'll be ready," she replied, though her tone wavered. "I can't let fear dictate my life again." Jake nodded approvingly. "That's the soldier I saw yesterday." He reached down to pat Max, who leaned into his hand with a soft whine. "How's the big guy holding up?" "Better than me," Lily admitted with a tired smile. Just then, the phone rang. Lily answered, expecting a client, but froze as a deep, sneering voice came through the line. "You think you can embarrass me and get away with it?" Her stomach dropped. "Brandon," she said, her tone sharp. "You made me look weak," he hissed. "My father's lawyers will make sure you pay for it. You'll lose that filthy clinic, and I'll make sure your mud is put down for being dangerous." The line went dead before Lily could respond. Her hand trembled slightly as she set the receiver down. Jake's jaw tightened. "He's escalating," she nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "He's not just angry, he's vengeful." That night, Jake met with the local sheriff, an old friend from his Navy days. Together, they gathered statements from witnesses who'd seen Brandon shove Lily. But when the sheriff tried to move the complaint forward, he sighed. "His father's got friends in high places," he muttered. "We'll need solid proof before I can act." Jake's eyes darkened. "Then we'll get proof." Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance, rolling across the horizon like an omen. Inside the clinic, Lily locked the doors and checked on Max. His gaze met hers, steady and unblinking, ready for whatever was coming next. Because somewhere out there, Brandon Hale was planning his next move. The night air was heavy with tension. Clouds gathered over Port Blossom, cloaking the streets in uneasy darkness. Most of the town had gone to sleep, but in the backseat of a black car parked near the old mill, Brandon Hale sat with two men who didn't belong in quiet places like this. Their faces were rough, eyes cold. He had paid them well and they didn't ask questions. "You sure this is just about some vet lady?" one of the men asked, lighting a cigarette. "Sounds petty for rich folks." Brandon's eyes narrowed. "She embarrassed me. That Navy guy humiliated me in front of everyone. They think they can make a fool out of me?" His voice cracked with anger. "I want her to remember this night every time she looks at that mutt." The taller man grinned, smoke curling from his mouth. "What do you want done?" Brandon leaned forward, his tone sharp. "Break some windows. Trash the place. Scare her. But don't touch her directly, just make it clear who she's dealing with." An hour later, the men crept through the narrow alley beside Port Blossom Veterinary Clinic. Rain began to fall, soft at first, then heavier, masking the sound of their boots. Inside, Lily had just finished checking the locks, unaware of the shadows moving outside. Max lay near the door, his ears twitching. A sudden crash shattered the night. Glass exploded inward as a rock smashed through the front window. Lily jumped to her feet. Max was already up, barking fiercely, teeth flashing in the dim light. Outside, one of the men laughed. "Good dog," he sneered, hurling another rock. Lily grabbed her phone, dialing frantically, but before she could speak, she heard a deeper growl, a sound of pure rage. Max lunged toward the door as a metal rod slammed against it. The frame splintered, and the men kicked it open halfway. Then headlights flashed from down the street. A figure emerged from the storm, Jake Turner. His voice boomed through the rain. "Step away from the building!" The men froze. One tried to run, but Jake was faster, grabbing him by the collar and throwing him down hard. The other stumbled into the dark, vanishing into the storm. Inside, Lily knelt beside Max, tears of relief and fear mixing on her cheeks. Blood trickled from the dog's shoulder. He'd been struck defending the clinic. Jake knelt beside them, his voice soft but firm. "He's hurt, but he's strong. Let's get him patched up." As lightning flashed outside, Brandon watched from his car down the road, pale and silent. He hadn't planned for Jake to show up. For the first time, fear replaced his arrogance. Rain poured in relentless sheets as Lily rushed through the clinic, her trembling hands pressing a towel against Max's wound. The German shepherd whimpered softly, his fur soaked with blood. The sound tore through her like a knife. "Stay with me, boy," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You've been through worse. You'll pull through again." Jake was beside her, his jaw tight, his shirt clinging wet to his shoulders. He grabbed the medical kit, following her directions with precision. "He's lost some blood, but the cut's clean," he said, voice steady. "We can close it." Lily's fingers moved fast, years of combat training taking over. She cleaned the wound, her breath quick but controlled. Every flash of lightning illuminated the worry in her eyes. "He shouldn't have had to protect me again," she whispered. Jake looked at her, his voice low. "He did what soldiers do. He protected his own." For a moment, silence filled the room, except for the patter of rain against glass. Lily's hands trembled as she finished the stitches. "You know," she said quietly, "every time I think we've found peace, something reminds me the world isn't done testing us." Jake leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Peace isn't something the world gives, Lily. It's something we build and fight to keep." She met his eyes, something fragile flickering there. Recognition, respect, maybe something deeper. She let out a shaky breath. "You sound like someone who's lost peace before." He smiled faintly, the kind that never reached his eyes. "More times than I care to remember." When Max finally drifted into sleep, Lily sank to the floor beside him. Her exhaustion hit like a wave, and before she could stop it, tears spilled down her cheeks. "I thought I left the war behind," she said softly. "But it keeps following me." Jake crouched beside her, his voice gentle but firm. "You didn't bring the war here. You brought healing. Don't let a spoiled kid make you forget that." Lily looked up, eyes shimmering. "You really think I can fix all this?" He gave a small nod. "With him by your side?" "Yeah, I do." Outside, the storm began to ease. The sound of thunder faded into the distance, leaving only the soft rhythm of raindrops. Inside, the clinic felt calmer, like the worst had passed, but Jake knew better. The kind of peace that follows a storm often hides another one waiting just beyond the horizon. And tonight, as he stood guard by the window, he vowed, no one would ever hurt them again. Morning broke slowly over Port Blossom, its golden light struggling to pierce the heavy gray of the night before. The rain had washed away the blood from the sidewalk, but it hadn't washed away the fear. The front window of Port Blossom Veterinary Clinic was boarded up now, a rough wooden reminder of what had happened. Inside, Lily sat at her desk, exhaustion etched deep in her face. Max rested beside her, bandaged but alert, his amber eyes following every sound. Jake entered quietly, carrying 2 coffees. "Didn't think you slept," he said, setting one in front of her. Lily gave a tired smile. "Didn't try to." She took the cup, her fingers trembling slightly. "I keep replaying last night. Those men, they knew exactly where to go." Jake nodded. "Which means someone told them." The words hung heavy in the air. He placed a folder on the desk. Inside were photos, names, and a few printed screenshots. "I went through security footage from nearby stores," he said. "They weren't locals. One of them's done small-time work for the Hale family before. Private security muscle for hire." Lily's expression hardened. "So Brandon really sent them?" Jake's jaw tightened. "Yeah, but his father's influence runs deep. If we go to the sheriff without evidence linking Brandon directly, it'll die in paperwork before it starts." Lily rubbed her temples. "So what do we do?" Jake leaned forward, his voice calm but full of resolve. "We collect proof. Real proof. I've got friends, retired MPs, investigators who owe me favors. I'll dig through Brandon's accounts, his calls, whatever it takes." She looked at him, her worry mixing with gratitude. "Jake, you don't have to—" He cut her off gently. "Yes, I do. Because men like him don't stop until someone makes them." For a long moment, neither spoke. Outside, the wind rattled the clinic's sign, a lonely sound in the quiet street. Lily finally nodded. "Then we fight smart. We make sure he can't hurt anyone again." Jake smiled faintly. "That's the spirit I remember from soldiers who never quit." Just then, Max lifted his head, ears perked. A car rolled by slowly outside, a dark SUV with tinted windows. Lily's stomach tightened. Jake noticed too, stepping closer to the window, his hand instinctively resting near his side. "They're watching," Lily whispered. Jake didn't look away. "Good," he said. "Let them. because next time we'll be ready. Outside, the SUV turned the corner and vanished, but the unease lingered, like the echo of a battle that hadn't yet begun. 3 days later, the town square buzzed with tension. Word had spread that something was happening, something big. People gathered outside Port Blossom City Hall, whispering, filming, waiting. In the center stood Jake Turner, calm as ever, a man ready for battle without a weapon in sight. Beside him stood Lily, her expression steady but cold. And sitting loyally at her side, bandages still visible beneath his fur, was Max, the silent witness to everything. Across the square, Brandon Hale arrived in his father's luxury SUV. He stepped out wearing his usual smug grin, sunglasses hiding the nervous flicker in his eyes. His father, Richard Hale, a man whose handshake could influence politicians, walked beside him, radiating authority and arrogance. Jake didn't move. "You finally decided to show up," he said evenly. Brandon scoffed. "You've got guts standing here, old man. What's the plan? Another lecture about honor?" Jake ignored him. He turned toward the crowd instead. "This isn't about me. It's about accountability." He raised his phone, connecting it to the portable projector set up behind him. The screen flickered to life, showing security footage from the night of the attack. 2 men breaking into Lily's clinic, one of them clearly visible. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Jake zoomed in, revealing a timestamp and a clear image of the man's face, the same one on Brandon's security team. "This man works for Brandon Hale," Jake said. "And here's the proof of payment." Another image appeared, a bank transfer from Brandon's personal account. Brandon's face drained of color. "That's fake!" he barked, but his voice cracked. Lily stepped forward, her voice calm but cutting. "You hired men to destroy a place that saves lives, and you hurt my dog doing it. But you didn't just attack us, Brandon. You attacked decency." The crowd murmured, the weight of her words sinking in. Even Richard Hale's confident expression faltered. "Brandon," he hissed quietly, "tell me this isn't true." Brandon stammered, eyes darting from his father to the screen. "I didn't mean for anyone to get hurt." Jake took a slow step closer. "Intent doesn't erase consequence." The sheriff appeared beside Jake, holding a clipboard. "We've verified everything. We've got statements, video, and digital records." He looked directly at Brandon. "You're under arrest for assault, vandalism, and animal cruelty." The square went silent. Brandon's arrogance shattered completely as the handcuffs clicked around his wrists. As officers led him away, the crowd parted. Jake glanced at Lily, who stood tall beside Max. For the first time since the chaos began, she allowed herself to breathe. Justice, long delayed, had finally arrived in Port Blossom. The late afternoon sun bathed Port Blossom Square in a golden glow, but the mood was anything but warm. As Brandon Hale was escorted toward the sheriff's cruiser, the same crowd that once admired his wealth now watched him in stunned silence. The smug arrogance that had once defined him was gone. His face was pale, his jaw trembling, his eyes darting nervously toward the onlookers who whispered his name. Reporters shouted questions, their microphones thrust forward. "Brandon, do you have anything to say for yourself?" One called out. Another yelled, "Is it true you ordered the attack on the clinic?" He didn't answer. Instead, he tripped on the curb, falling hard to the pavement. The cameras flashed instantly, capturing the moment. The powerful heir to the Hale fortune, reduced to nothing but a frightened boy in a designer jacket. From across the square, Lily and Jake watched quietly. Lily's heart didn't celebrate his downfall. It simply felt relief that justice had found its way through the noise. "It's over," she murmured. Jake's gaze stayed on Brandon. "For him, maybe. For you, it's a new beginning." Just then, a sound cut through the murmurs, the soft click of claws on concrete. Max walked forward from Lily's side, steady and calm, his bandaged shoulder gleaming in the sunlight. The crowd stepped aside as he approached Brandon, who looked up in shock. The shepherd stopped a few feet away, standing tall, his gaze unwavering. He didn't bark, didn't growl. He just stood there, proud, strong, unbroken. The symbol of everything Brandon had tried to destroy but couldn't. Lily followed behind, stopping beside Jake. "Look at him," she whispered. "He doesn't hate him, he just stands his ground." Jake nodded slowly. "That's what real strength looks like." The sheriff opened the car door, but before Brandon was guided inside, he glanced once more at the dog. For the first time, something flickered behind his eyes. Regret or maybe shame. It was fleeting, but it was real. As the cruiser pulled away, the townspeople began to clap. Not out of mockery, but out of gratitude. For Lily, for Jake, for Max. Lily looked down at her dog, smiling softly. "You did it, boy. You protected us all." Max wagged his tail once as if he understood. Jake looked at them both, pride in his eyes. "Heroes come in all shapes," he said quietly. "Some wear uniforms. Some wear fur." And in that moment, beneath the fading light, the war they had never asked for finally found its peace. 2 weeks later, Port Blossom felt different. The tension that had hung heavy over the town was replaced by something lighter: hope. The Port Blossom Veterinary Clinic stood rebuilt, its fresh white paint gleaming beneath the morning sun. The shattered windows were gone, replaced with new glass that reflected life again. The "closed for repairs" sign had been taken down. In its place hung one simple word: open. Inside, Lily arranged a small bouquet of wildflowers on the front counter. The smell of antiseptic and lavender filled the air. Max sat near the doorway, tail wagging slowly as familiar faces entered one by one: neighbors, friends, even strangers who had come to thank her for what she'd endured. Jake stood by the window, arms crossed, watching the people stream in. He'd been helping around the clinic ever since the incident, repairing shelves, walking dogs, and making himself part of something peaceful for the first time in years. "Busy morning," he said with a faint grin. Lily smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Feels good, doesn't it? Seeing everyone come together again." Jake nodded. "You rebuilt more than a clinic, Lily. You rebuilt trust." Across town, another story unfolded. Brandon Hale, now stripped of his father's legal shield, stood before the judge with his lawyer by his side. The courtroom was quiet as the sentence was read: 6 months of community service, fines for property damage, and mandatory volunteer work at, ironically, Port Blossom's animal shelter. Brandon's father, Richard Hale, sat in the back, his expression unreadable. But when it was over, he approached Lily outside the courthouse. "Miss Carter," he said stiffly, "what my son did was unforgivable. But I owe you an apology." Lily studied him carefully. "He hurt a lot of lives, Mr. Hale, but I believe people can change if they want to." Richard nodded, guilt flickering in his eyes. "Then I'll start by funding the expansion of your clinic. Consider it repayment." Lily hesitated, then offered a faint smile. "Not repayment, restoration." Weeks passed. Brandon began his community service, silent and awkward at first. But as the days turned into weeks, the arrogance faded. He cleaned kennels, fed strays, and once, hesitantly, petted Max when the dog approached him without fear. Lily watched from a distance, whispering, "Maybe he's finally learning." Beside her, Jake smiled softly. "Sometimes the hardest battles are the ones we fight within." The clinic's bell chimed as another client entered, sunlight spilling across the floor. Port Blossom had found balance again, and so had the people within it. Spring arrived gently in Port Blossom. The air was filled with the scent of blooming magnolias, and the town that had once been divided by anger now thrived in quiet harmony. The Port Blossom Veterinary Clinic had become more than a place for healing animals. It was a symbol of strength, forgiveness, and second chances. Inside, Lily Carter moved through the sunlit halls with her usual calm grace. The sound of paws echoed behind her as Max, now fully recovered, followed her every step. His fur gleamed under the light, the scar on his shoulder a silent medal of loyalty and courage. Every wag of his tail carried pride. In the back room, Jake Turner worked on repairing a kennel door. He had traded his military uniform for rolled-up sleeves and a simple flannel shirt, but his quiet authority never faded. When Lily entered, he looked up with a grin. "You sure you don't miss all the chaos?" Lily laughed softly. "This is chaos, just the peaceful kind." She handed him a cup of coffee. "Besides, I think Port Blossom's safer with a Navy SEAL hanging around." Jake took the cup, smiling. "Maybe, or maybe it's safer because of one stubborn vet and her fearless partner." He looked down at Max, who wagged his tail as if agreeing. Outside, the sound of laughter drew their attention. Brandon was walking a group of shelter dogs, his once polished shoes now dusty, his expression humbled but genuine. He waved awkwardly toward the clinic window, and Lily smiled faintly. Looks like he's learning, she said. Maybe we all are, Jake replied quietly. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, Lily stepped outside with Max. She watched the horizon, the waves in the distance glimmering like molten gold. Jake joined her, standing silently for a moment before saying, "You know, in the Navy we used to say, 'The calm after the storm is earned, not given.'" Lily smiled, eyes soft. "Then I guess we earned it." Max barked once, the sound echoing through the gentle evening air. Lily knelt beside him, wrapping an arm around his neck. "You did good, boy," she whispered. Jake placed a hand on her shoulder. Together they watched the sunset. Three souls who had faced cruelty, fought for justice, and found peace. Sometimes heroes wear uniforms. Sometimes they wear fur.